Proceed. Good afternoon. We'd like to take time to welcome everyone who's in attendance as we set the agenda for the June 15th, 2021 City of Little Rock Board of Directors meeting. Actually, also to give notice, that particular meeting will take place at Little Rock Southwest High School in Southwest Little Rock. So I want to make that official announcement. It'll be online, of course, and we'll do other notices to ensure that everyone is aware, because we will no longer be at the Robinson. We'll be at Little Rock Southwest High. And then, Mr. Moore, how about you give just a brief update at the other locations, please?
Mayor, members of the board, after Southwest High School on the 15th, right now there are five Tuesdays in June. So we typically don't meet on the 4th. We'll be there probably for the month of July. And then at that point, the UMS clinic, we're working with them on when they're going to wind down their vaccine clinic. And the ultimate goal will be having our meetings at the location with chambers and everything. So right now, Southwest High, next Tuesday, 29th, we'll be at Flanders Smith, probably for the month of July, and then we'll figure out next steps.
Thank you, Manager Moore, and also Director Phillips. This is a recommendation to move around the city. I want to acknowledge you did that. Acknowledge that it's acknowledge that.
Mayor, I was going to do this at the end of the meeting, but I do want to thank the CEO of the Little Rock Convention Bureau, Gretchen Hall, and her staff. When we first came over here last spring, we did not realize we. At this point, they've not charged us anything through this entire process. I do feel like it's appropriate to reimburse them at some point, and we have filed that with our FEMA reimbursement. But I think we really owe them a great debt of gratitude.
Totally agree. Let's give them a round of applause. And Mr. Moore, I just want to recognize you, our city clerk, and particularly our IT team and LRTV, who've been very nimble and flexible in working with not only the city but residents and ensuring that business did not stop in the middle of the pandemic, and that we took on a new way of conducting business, both in person and safely, as well as virtually. So a round of applause for LRTV and IT. That being said, any questions on items 1 through 12?
Mayor, let me get my little hand up.
Director Wright?
I'd like a presentation on 3 and 4.
Director Howard.
Good afternoon. Director Wright, item number 3 is we're coming back before you. We received some additional funding under CDBG from the federal government, from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, in the amount of about $22,000. So with that additional amount that was provided to us, award letter was sent to us less than a month ago. And so we would have to come back before the board to get that, so the sources and uses approved for that additional amount of money. This is your consolidated plan. As last month, we brought the plan before you. So this is to approve the consolidated 2021 through 2025 consolidated plan and the 2021 action plan for CDBG home HOPWA entitlement funds from U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Did we get any feedback from the public? I know we were challenged this year with the COVID.
Yes, we had our last meeting about 2 weeks ago, our last public meeting on analysis of impediments, and we did receive feedback. Most of the feedback we received was consistent with what we are already doing with our sources and uses of funds, which is owner-occupied rehabilitation, affordable housing, the normal needs that we have, our public service grants that we provide under Meals on Wheels program, our healthcare services that we provide.
Well, I did get a survey and I completed that. Is the survey that was sent out to people part of this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because it did ask some questions on how other ways to expend the money could be implemented. And I know I addressed it. So I'm hoping that that is taken into consideration.
Yes, ma'am.
I did take my time.
Yeah, it's a long survey. It was
Yes,
a long
is.
survey.
I was looking all upside your head. You probably didn't know why, but that was why, because that was some kind of survey. Anyway, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Director Adcock.
Yes, Mayor, I would like to have item 5 held separate. Several of the neighborhood people was trying to reach Director Warwick on to this today, and she wasn't available. They're not questioning so much this, but the use of the property. I've talked to Mr. Collins about it, and it will not be coming back before us. So at this point, this will be the only time the neighborhood will be able to ask questions about it. So I would like item 5 held separate.
Yes, ma'am. Director Phillips.
Thank you, Mayor. I had questions on number 7, number 8, number 9 and 10, which are kind of the same question, and number 12. And I remember this may be a question for the city manager, and just to educate me. I understand this property is located in tower is located in North Little Rock. Could you give me a little, as a new person here, I'm trying to understand why we have a property in North Little Rock.
Sure. We have 3 towers that we share expenses with the county. And this one happens to be in North Little Rock. It's been a multi-year agreement. I think even this one is a 10-year agreement. This has been in place for quite some time. And all the towers work together, as you can imagine. And this one happens to be, the lease is up on the property, and it happens to be in North Little Rock.
Okay. I thought it was something that simple, so thank you. And then number 8, I'm supportive of giving our Little Rock Police Department what they need to do their job even more efficiently. But I would just like, maybe, I don't know if that's you, Mayor, or the city manager, to kind of help us understand how this equipment is going to better assist the police doing what.
Yeah, Board Director Phillips, just to answer your question, the item that is up for to the modems that are in our vehicles. These are the annual maintenance contracts that are going. It allows the internet connectivity in the car for the computers, all the GPS data that is done with our CAD, and then also allows us to transfer the video from the in-car systems and the body cams through the internet connectivity into our system. basically what this piece of technology does.
Okay, okay. All right, understood. Thank you,
Yes,
Captain
sir.
Hampton.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding that?
No, sir. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Major.
And then, I'm gonna number 9 and 10 and go to number 12, Mayor. The parking lot at Two Rivers, I didn't see a diagram on the agenda. Are we just extending the existing parking lot, or would this be a new location? And I'm not sure who's best to answer that, Mayor.
John Eckert.
John?
Director Eckert. And Director Hendricks, I see you. I'm going to be coming to you shortly.
Good afternoon. Director Phillips, this is a new park lot, which is going to be located at the base of the River Mountain Bike Trails that we're developing currently. And this also is going to add approximately 10 to 12, I can't remember the exact number, but 10 to 12 spaces at the bottom parking lot by the boat ramp. So it'll be 2 different spaces in that area.
And I'm trying to visualize the space. I know where the trail is going. So help me orient where the parking lot would be, because it doesn't seem like a lot of space there.
So there was a semi-flat space that staff has already done a lot of groundwork to levelize and put in base level for a contractor to come in and asphalt and finish out the parking lot. So it's right before you get to the train tracks. It's directly to your west of the roadway.
Oh, before the train tracks?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you. And then Mayor, this is probably just a comment for you, but number 9 and 10, looks like we are doing some agreements with some local businesses. I know we done business with before. And I'm not even sure how to ask the question, Mayor, but when I was reading the packet, the thing that came to my mind immediately is, I know we've made efforts and strives to increase our minority spend on who the city does business with and things like that. So I was just wondering, was that part of this consideration, or are we going to work with some companies that are working with these companies to do this work, or kind of the thought process that went to get us to where we are? It's kind of a weird question, but that's where my mind went, and just wanted to address that today.
Historically, and I believe even currently, not I believe, I know East Harding does a great job in working with minority and women contractors in their projects. So we expect that to be a part of the process. They're one of the leading construction companies that does that, and there are many that do it. So that's to answer that. On the standpoint, that's a bit for this project. The existing provider that did go through that process, I believe 10 years ago when the 12th Street, when there was not the 12th Street, but they've been a part of that process before. Mr. Moore, if you want to, if there's any additional information in regards to the architect. I think they were very much involved in the 12th Street substation at one point. I can't remember. That was 10 years. Well, I wasn't here.
Yeah, they actually were not involved in that particular. That was Yellowington, but in 12th Street. But they have been a part of working with the city for quite some time. And what we do is, and Derek Rainey's here to kind of talk about the process we went through. Because Derek, I don't know if this was an APO or we actually did a bid process.
Mr. Rainey, for those who, Mr. Rainey, maybe introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Board, Mayor, City Manager. My name is Derek Rain. I'm Small Business Development Coordinator here at the city. And the process, I was coming out of procurement as well. So we did issue an RFQ for the construction manager services, as well as the statement of qualifications at the beginning of the year for our and the text from the statement of qualifications list. Those were those who had submitted their qualifications at the beginning of the year. Selection committee did review those who met historic renovation requirements, and then WD&D was selected from there.
Understood. And I just know some of our citizens asked me about that, so I just wanted to make sure that we're being at least transparent to them that we're going through that process and still, that goal is still a goal though, right, Mayor, for us to increase the minority spend, correct?
Emphatically, yes, sir. Our commitment is to get to at least 25% by the end of next year.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Rainey.
Thank you.
Director Adcock?
Yes, Mayor, lots of us on this board served with Director Hinton, and this building is very important to us because it is named after Willie Hinton. Can you tell us what's being done to the Hinton Center, please?
Mr. Rainey?
I tried to get you before you sat down.
Okay, Dr. Adcock, thank you. So what is being completed in this project is some minor renovations to the first and second floors. We are going to recarpet as well as repaint. The reception area will be remodeled, as well as the current display case for Mr. Hinton will actually be moved towards the front, and there'll be a new display case celebrating his work. There also will be some minor renovations, painting, furnishing in the auditorium as well as room 106. And then in some of the other classrooms, there will be some new furniture. There's a second part of phase one, which will be the basement will be brought up to code. So it will be remodeled, like construction work, plumbing, electrical, mechanical, as well as AV and technology will be then done in the basement level.
Thank you very much. It's a very special building being named after Willie.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Rainey. Director Wright?
Yes, sir. Mr. Moore, can you tell me where these funds are coming from for 9 and 10?
The city's general fund.
And what about number 11? And it says Interstate Park.
And John, that might be the 3/8 cent.
Director Wright, that was a combination of a grant match from 2019 and the motor fuel tax. So it'll be a matching grant.
And orient me to this park.
Interstate Park is located off of Arch Street.
Went all the way down Arch.
That's the softball field. That's what I thought.
Softball fields, yes, ma'am.
So where's the boat ramp gonna be?
Can be on the Fush Creek side, the south side of the park.
Probably the side I never been on. Because I was trying to visualize it in my mind and I could not.
Yes, ma'am.
So if I were going to go over there to see this, how would I get there?
So you would the park and you would turn south. There's a one road that goes south in the park.
You
and
mean the ribbon?
going towards the pavilion area, and you keep on going towards the river.
The ribbon that goes like that road?
That is the main road, which is currently in the poor condition. Yes, ma'am.
Do we have any plans to do anything to that road?
We've had discussions definitely about repairing that road. Yes, ma'am.
No plan though.
I believe it's part of the short-term financing that will be proposed in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, I think that answers those two questions. I'll leave my other two for the end, Mayor, if you don't mind.
Thank you so much, Director Wright and Director Eckert. Any questions for items 13 through 20? Oh, Director Hendricks, thank you, Manager Moore. Director Hendricks? We see you. Director Hendricks? Yes, ma'am. It looks like either on our end or your end, there's a technical issue, but we did hear you initially, Director Hendricks.
Can you hear me
We can hear you now.
now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I don't think so.
We can hear you.
Boy, I got a lot to say. I guess
Hendricks, we can hear you.
can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I really
Director Hendricks, we're experiencing some feedback on your end.
well, concerned about it. You can? Okay. Bruce let him know that the technician tried about 20 minutes and they couldn't get it to work. So don't worry, I'll just sit here and listen, okay? Well, it seems that, it's because I'm on my phone. Okay, okay, bye. Well, I did, the question I was asking, respond practice. It's not at 10. I don't know the gentleman that came up to talked about that, but that's a drop in the bucket talking about what he's going to do. But be satisfied with all of these big contracts going to minorities that have going to the majority. Without minority participation with those particular companies. You know, you all sit and play games.
Mayor,
I think I kind of deciphered the intent of her question. Manager Moore?
and one of the things that we've been working with finance on is this concept of joint ventures, that at a certain level of a bid, is that we would almost require joint ventures. So we're trying to work through that. There's some things like our banking business and things like that that it's just not going to be allowed. But we are trying to do. I mean, obviously, you know, a minority company can bid on it by themselves, but we've learned over the years that sometimes it's bonding capacity, sometimes it's a staffing capacity. So one of the things we're trying to do is come up with a threshold to say over a certain amount, we're going to really look at joint venturing and how that could help improve our minority spend.
Thank you so much, Manager Moore. Director Webb and Director as well. Director Webb.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could we get a presentation on number 17? And just as an FYI, a couple of constituents have texted and said that the audio they're having a really hard time hearing us.
Yes, ma'am. And
Thanks.
thank you for LRTV and IT are working on it right now as we speak. Director Collins.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board. What this item was, is this item had to come before the board back in January of this year for approval as a straight zoning to R5 zoning for the apartment development. It was denied at the board. It also went before the Board of Adjustments for a height variance at about that same time frame to increase the height above the 36-foot on the R5. Now, the application went for the planning before the board, and where that was approved at the planning commission. And there was a question raised before about substantial change. And could the board hear this again in the year time? The ordinance does state that the board that does not want to hear an item if it's identical or substantially identical, is the way that the code reads. The application now that is before the board went before the planning commission is a change from the R5 to the multifamily or MF24. And what that is 24 units per the acre, which is a reduction from the 36 units per the acre that was requested at that hearing in January. And that is straight zoning. And at this time, that is what they are requesting for that. Also, at that time, there was a request from Director Wright submitted to staff and also through the mayor requesting that we analyze this through some type of written guideline. And the answer was we did look at items that was presented in the guideline, and we was handed a so we did also go that in this application, and we have submitted that and is currently reviewing that guideline for multifamily with the planning commission, and hopefully over the next couple months we can have some present board and report that the planning commission has viewed for recommendations on any change in code or a manual that they are proposing. But we did go through the process and the items that on there, and one thing that I do want to point out is going through this process and analyzed at least about 60% of the stuff that they look for in development guidelines. Oh, the deal, when we analyzed what the guidelines that they went through, that city of Springfield, Missouri, we looked at about 60% of the things that they look at. Some of the stuff that are in addition to that they look at that we don't is more into design of the site, the layout of it, the amenities, you know, playground areas. But some of the stuff we do it, and we look at it in several phases. One is when the land use plan is adopted and zoning accordingly. We look at all that infrastructure analysis, where things need to be placed with overall infrastructure. And as before, this property is on the land use plan is residential high density, which is what we're looking for is a density greater than 12 units per the acre. That's what that designation is. And so in doing so, we went through, and I would like to kind of go through a brief write-up, a little over a page long, of how this compares with and also is aligned with why we recommended the first time in recommendation of approval, and also this time through the Planning Commission recommendation of approval. Now, Planning Commission did hear it. There was members come out in opposition as before and the Planning Commission did vote to approve it with 3-4 or 7-4 and 3 against on that vote. Things that was presented to them, I'm about to talk about now. I'm going to go in a little bit more detail about the addressing in comparison to that guideline that was presented so you can kind of understand what they went through. So in that guideline, they looked at several things: the land use accessibility, connectivity analysis of the area around it and all modes of transportation, the road network evaluation, the existing road network as it would align with what we would have as our master street plan, and also the design guidelines of the site itself. For the land use accessibility, what they're looking for is they're trying to give points or approval for developers who wish to build multifamily developments close to supportive land uses. And what they're typically looking for in those land uses are public schools, public recreation centers or parks, greenway trails, neighborhoods serving retail. By that is just retail in the area that would serve that neighborhood, that development. Employment concentration base, how many jobs could be had in the area that people could walk to and bike to in that area, medical facilities, libraries, and or supermarkets. And they're looking at a radius from 1/4 mile to 1/2 mile on that. And that is to support trips made by bicycle or pedestrian activity, to reduce the number of automobile trips per day. And those who choose to drive an automobile to go to those would drive shorter trips. And the intent is to relieve stress on existing streets, highways, and other negative impacts, the environmental, the fossil fuel and burning of fossil fuels. And our look, when staff looked at this comparison to it, we went out and just in a 1/3 mile radius, we found retail, and that developed primarily to the west. Restaurants to the west. Pharmacy, auto services, mini storage, banks, and medical services. In those areas, there's also numerous employment opportunities located in that vicinity and also up to 1 mile from the site. The site is located within 1 mile from Butler Park, less than 2 miles from Reservoir Park. There is a proposed bike path, bike lane, a class 2, which would be 2 5-foot independent lanes striped off on either side of Rodney Parham. So that is planned. It's not current now, but that is planned for the future on the master street plan. A future paved trail running on the west side of Grassy Flat Creek per our master trail plan, going north-south for connectivity. So that is proposed. It's not current, but proposed. And the site is located less than 1 mile from McDermott Elementary School along Reservoir Road. So in comparison of the land use, that's why we felt that this was appropriate for a land use accessibility, and also why they chose to do that in the past too, that this was a good location for residential high density. In the connectivity analysis, what they're talking about is they're looking for developments that build sites that is well connected to surrounding areas by the roadways, transit services, sidewalks, greenways, and the bicycles. So it's a little bit of duplication of what you see in the land use to try to get people to use other modes of transportation other than automobiles to the area. And they're doing analysis in that same radius, about 1/2 mile away from the deal. And they're looking for good connectivity that promotes all forms of transportation, that saves travel time around that area, and that when they do their site, that there is a proposed extension, like in our master street plan where we're saying proposed roads. They're not looking to cut off a major road that's proposed, for connecting the area. So this property, it competes for access, and I spoke about that in the January meeting. We're looking at Brookside Drive going south, and then also to connect to Rodney Parham, but also going north, it will also connect with White Rock Lane, and will turn and go back to the west and connect with Reservoir Road. The nearest bus route, and that's what they're looking for also on multimodal transportation, is at Rodney Parham. Rock Region Metro has line number 8 or route number 8, and that's less than 1,000 feet to the south at Rodney Parham. And that would also be accessed by the existing sidewalks that are on Brookside that would take it down to Rodney Parham. And they are proposing in that development of the site to have that connectivity in the site to get down to the sidewalks. So there is no existing trails or bicycle facilities, at these locations on Brookside or Rodney Parham as I described previously. And then on White Rock Lane, currently, when they develop that section, there's not a sidewalk that would connect and run adjacent in White Rock Lane all the way down to Reservoir. So if they would get there, that is a residential roadway. They could utilize that or be walking on the side of the road. So that didn't add into that. That connectivity is, on that north side, is more for the Brookside that we talked about, the connectivity for Rock Region Metro. And then the potential connectivity, as explained before, is the bicycle facilities that's proposed on Rodney Parham, and also the future paved trail along Grassy Flat Creek. They went in and also in that guideline to study the road network in that same mile radius, a quarter mile to half mile evaluation. And what they're looking for is just the number of streets. It'd be best to explain it that in a downtown or a grid type system where every 300 or so feet you have another street, that kind of gets you in points in this system. So the more of those kind of connections in a short to give more modes or ways to get out of a development, the higher you go on this list that's on there. But as you can tell, as you go further out, start break up and do a different type of development because of the grades out there. That grid system kind of starts dissipating. So we're looking at an area that type of a grid system is not there. And so when we looked at that, we found that within a half mile radius, there is 4 minor arterial roadways. So you're looking at Rodney Parham, Reservoir, Markham, and then also Brookside is that ties Rodney Parham to Markham at that south direction. But then also that would also continue on, turn over to John Barrow and continue down to interstate. So outside of that half mile, there is 2 interstates that connect the development. So while in something that Springfield would have looked at, it wouldn't have got a lot of points on the connectivity because they didn't have that continued grid system. And for us, when we looked at it, there is still a good road network analysis. There was concerns brought up at the meeting, at the Planning Commission meeting, also this recent one, about the level of traffic that is out there in Rodney Parham. Both this, the south connection is coming to a light for that. And then you also need to look at just when they do an analysis, and I'm sure the consultant, when they come in for the developer, will present their analysis. They did not find any, detriment to what this development would do to the traffic as a whole along Rodney Parham. I wrote down what their study said. It says, with the low increase in traffic volume at the intersection of Rodney Parham Road and Brookside Drive during the AM and PM peak hours, there is expected to be minimal impact to traffic operations at this intersection if the development is constructed as proposed. And that is also the reduction in the number. So the last guideline that they went through is just the design guideline for the site. Now, as this is a straight zoning, site review is done at the building permit level. So if zoning is approved for the MF24, when the developer applies for the building permit, we look at those conditions for the site design, for the connectivity, for the road connection, for the sidewalks. That is done at staff level on any site that comes before at building permit. Or placement, that type of scenario. The developer also did talk with trying to preserve a buffer area along the creek, but that width has not been determined because plans have not been submitted at this time. And so I can't really go into some of their aspects of how it addresses what they're looking for in that guidelines, but it also goes into pools, swimming pools, recreation for the people that stay there, and also how they would preserve the natural environment associated with this type of development. So in that type of a guideline, that would happen at a application for zoning stage, but ours, we look at it when it is a building plan permit stage. And even at, as you've seen before, even when a plan development is brought before the board, they vary in what is presented to the board. A plan development could be just a conceptual development of uses that they want to do and put in, but no site plan is associated. And it can also increase to specific site plans, layouts, building types, and that type of aspects that is brought before the board for approval on a plan development. So I cannot really compare those two. So in that aspect up, I tried to explain why staff recommended approval for this development and that it adhered to the land use plan of residential high density, but it also aligned with other aspects as far as roadway network connectivity and future plans of that same connectivity.
Director Wright?
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Did you find that guideline, the guidance that I gave, kind of beneficial in any way?
Yes, ma'am.
Because it gives me a little bit more clarity as far as complaints that we would get from a development, because we have something that it's more cohesive and not just fragmented, and people can kind of understand the analysis that we go through or that your department goes through. To me, those guidelines made a lot of sense, and I appreciate you for going through there and taking your time to apply those guidelines to this particular development. I feel a little bit more comfortable. I know people are still against it, but I feel like we have done due diligence, and we've looked at it in multiple areas to see how the impact would be on the neighborhood. So I heard you mention something about putting something before the planning commission. So are we going to, or your department going to develop something that we can use more, that's more specific to Little Rock,
Yes,
similar,
ma'am.
or?
It will be a little similar. It hasn't been defined yet. I presented this same study and kind of explained a little bit to the planning commission, and they set up a committee, a subcommittee to work through that. So at some point in time, we will be inviting the public to those when we get something initially drafted. But they understood some of the issues that was brought forth. They were given a copy of it. So it is in review right now. We haven't scheduled the meeting that starts that yet, but it was about 2 planning commissions ago. So 2 months ago, I did make that presentation and talk with them about it, and then did get the committee selected to proceed.
Okay. Well, I'd like to, if at all possible, I'd like to attend at least one of those meetings where it's discussed, because these things come up all the time. Multifamily is always an issue, and anything that we can do to assure the public that we've done everything that we could do to mitigate any negative effects on our single-family residential neighborhoods, I think they would take that as us hearing them. And trust me, I've heard them for years, and I'm sure you have too. And I think this change or this addition to what we do and how we do it, I think will go a long way toward, assuaging some of their concerns.
Yes, ma'am. We'll keep you updated.
Thank you.
Director Campuris? Director Adcock, is your hand still up?
Yes.
And just want to,
When this was came up, it was, how much density was there? 36?
They go to a maximum of 36 units per the acre, but once they start development, it's for that site, it would probably be pretty hard for them to get max number of units just because of the slope on the parking. That would be the maximum allowed.
But you felt like going from 36 to 24 satisfied the fact that we didn't have to wait a year?
Yes,
Okay.
because it says identical or substantially identical.
But you think 36 to 24 is substantial?
Yeah, that's a substantial reduction. That's nearly a 20 or 30% reduction in the number of units that they could put on the property.
Okay. And secondly, the presentation you've just given, have you talked to the people that are opposed to this and given your rationale to them in that succinct, carefully thought out manner?
The presentation I prepared for the board tonight was not given in that detail at the planning commission. We did summarize that, and it was attached with all of the write-up that was at that planning commission.
Well, I would suggest if there is a way of getting the groups together and going over that with both groups present between now and next week, that, now that we have not listening to the dog issues, this is probably the thing that I get more letters on and notes on than anything. And I have a feeling that the two groups look at things very differently, and it's going to be a big fight unless someone sits down and talks with everybody beforehand. And there still may be a big fight, but at least gives everybody the opportunity to have your wisdom, and that's what you're here for.
Yes, sir.
Director Adcock?
Yes. Mr. Collins, on item 13 and 14, these was before us, 2 or 3 months ago?
Excuse me, I'm going to pull this up.
13 and 14? On what Chico?
Yeah, that was before the board about that same time frame to come in. They, at that time, proposed a denser development. This current application is for 8 units, or they wanted 8 units on there.
Mayor, we had quite a bit of neighborhood opposition to this, and I noticed this with all this group items. I suggest that we hold these two separate because we did have neighborhood opposition, and I don't.
That's item number 17 and item
13 and 14.
13 and 14, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and they did have opposition the first time, Director. I agree with that. Now, at the planning commission meeting for the item you're speaking of, nobody showed up at the planning commission. They did meet with the neighborhood association in that area for this, and my understanding is they were not looking for apartments. They were looking for more of a grocery store type development for that area. But they also addressed some concerns. I think the adjacent property owner to the north was asking about drainage concerns, about how this would affect their property. And when this come through, we required them to do a preliminary analysis of the drainage to show that there would be no adverse impact proposed at this time. As far as addressing the grocery store, they may still want that type of development, but please keep in mind that this is 0.73 acres. A grocery store of any size cannot be developed on this property. It's just too small. It would be more analogous to a convenience store type, but most convenience stores, to make money or have some type of draw to that store, looks to be like a convenience store with gas pumps. But even that, a 0.73 acre site is a little small for that type of
No,
development.
I agree with you. This is no location for a grocery
Yeah.
store. Mayor, on the basis that the director is not here, the ward director is not here, the neighborhood had a lot of opposition to this. I would like to ask that we keep this separate. I got some emails today from some neighborhood people. I'm not for sure this was it's the same group of neighborhood people. And I'm not for sure if this is one of their items, but I would like to keep this separate, both 13 and 14.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Director Phillips?
Thank you, Mayor. Question for Director Collins on number 17 again. I understand you're saying that they did not have to wait a year because this is a substantial change from what we voted on earlier this year, correct?
That's correct.
And going from R5 to MF24, I know that's 24 units per acre, but in layman's term, how many apartment units are we talking about at the MF 24 level?
Well, if you're given that the site is approximately 11 acres, it's 11.66 acres. So you're looking at, depends on the layout, somewhere between 200 and 280, when they do the layout.
Has the
It could
developer,
reduce from that.
obviously they don't have to use the entire 280, but has there been a conversation about how many units they are expecting to build?
If you hold on a second, I think I have some notes at the planning commission presentation of what they said they were looking at. We didn't write that down, but I do remember the developer speaking specifically on the amount of units they were looking to have. I will go back and review that video and send that out to everybody on the exact number of unit talking about of what they felt they might be able to get.
Okay. Thank you, Director Collins. That's all I have, Mayor.
I think we've,
Mayor?
Director Hines, Vice Mayor Hines. Your hand from
I think
earlier.
I have my question answered. Thank you.
All right.
Mayor?
Director Wright.
Number 19, Mr. Collins, or that's you, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you know the rationale behind this change? I'm not opposed to the change. I'm just asking, because I know there was another issue in that area with
Yeah,
Cooper Orbit.
it'd probably be best to explain if we bring up the zoning map, if we
Okay.
could,
Thank
on this one for the area. And I'll start, the area is outside of the city limits. So if you look at, when we finally bring it up, you'll kind of see that it is around that Lake Nixon area. And if you look at all the zoning that's around it, you can see that it is AF, and that's agricultural that's in there. And agricultural would be more analogous to what they're using for that Lake Nixon Day Camp and Conference Center type of deal. And that's what they're actually looking to do here.
Okay.
They just wanted to align the zoning. One of them, there was existing homes that were there.
Mhm.
And over time, they've been purchasing property to add to that. And so this is pretty much an alignment, trying to just get it back to a lesser zoning to support that Lake Nixon type of thing for agricultural. So that was the aspect. That's
Okay.
what they're doing
What-
it for.
That's good to know. I was hoping that was the case. Because I know that goes into Spring Valley Manor, and they are very active out there. And that makes sense that this change take place. Okay.
Any other questions from items?
Mayor, 21, I'd like a presentation on that. See the actual units if we could.
Yes, thank you. Collins.
21, if we could bring up the slideshow, please. Yeah, this is located at 4102 Asher Avenue. Staff went out and investigated Asher Avenue for properties along there for just remediation, which could be citation and taken to court to repair, and also looking at it, did it get to a point that we believe we need to bring it before the board for condemnation? This was one of the sites that we believe it needs to be condemned. It has been broken into multiple times. One of the main aspects that is being used for right now is a homeless camp that is took up and resided in that building. We have reached out multiple times to the property owners, trying to get them to clean up, help secure the building, maintain the building. The property owners is a corporation out in California, I believe. It's the old Advanced Auto site is what that is. That's kind of what you see. And so the windows, the doors have been broken out, several of the windows, they've gained access to the rear. There's a garage door in the back. I don't know if we actually have that picture of what's there. They've been hanging out also in the back, just it's been a site that people hang out back there. I saw where they were burning stuff in the evenings or at nights in the back, graffiti. And so we went through this process. We have notified the property owner pursuant to state law. We have not heard anything back. And so this is the next step to actually bring it before the board for review and just to get their decision on the condemnation of the property so that we can send it to bid and raise the building. So this is just one site of an overall task that we are looking at along Asher Avenue.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Item 21, any questions for 22, 23, or 24? No questions for 22, 23, 24. Director Webb?
Mr. Mayor, if we're finished with the items, I have a question about something else and a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
My question is, we were supposed to have a short-term rental meeting this past week and it got postponed, and I wondered if we had a timeline on when that meeting might take place.
Director Collins?
Yes, Director Webb, we are looking to have it 2 weeks out. And so we will forward out the exact, we're still working on the exact address and then the time frame, but we will send out a notice. And it was canceled just due to the weather, which at that time that we was about to meet, it did come pouring down. So we believe that hopefully 2 weeks out, it'll calm down. And we're also trying to find an inside venue that will accommodate.
Thank you. And also, Mr. Mayor, at the May 11th special called meeting where we discussed the Rebuild the Rock sales tax election, I made a motion to table both of the items until July 13th to allow for further discussion and also to allow for input by the board and from the public. And I would state that it's going to be my intention to request that these items be on the board's agenda for our next meeting.
I think with it now being this, we may need to, and we'll discuss afterwards, but I think we may need to do a special meeting to discuss. But we can figure it out between now and then. Thank you so much.
Mayor.
Director Wright?
Okay. Mr. Moore, I had requested from Parks that they do a site plan for the outdoor learning center that we received some corporate donations for. And we also have a corporate fundraiser that's taking place for that prior. And to know
Yeah, like then the one they needed to get the information to the
Yes.
entity.
Yes,
And
he's looking for the site plan.
yeah, they haven't done that yet.
No, not to my knowledge, and I don't want to wait too long. You don't want people to think that you're not appreciative of what they're trying to do. If somebody's willing to say they'll raise the difference, you need to move on it, I think.
I know Leland was working on it, but I'll follow up.
Okay, and there was one other, the parking lot at West Central. As you know, that failed in several areas about 4 years ago. Remember, we lost a year, and I think I made you aware of it in 2019, and all of this had started taking place in 2018. And the building was just built in 2016, so I felt that that parking lot should not have had those many failures on it with being that new. And I wanted a timeline for when those areas are going to be repaired. And additionally, There's one more parcel in the back that is landlocked and inaccessible from Colonel Glenn. There's a parcel back there with a house on it. I'd like to know the ownership of that house to see if we could get that property donated, because there is no access to that house. And I know it has to be flooding because it's like down away from the park, but it's adjacent to and contiguous to a piece of property that was donated to us in 2019. It would just make sense to acquire all of that. And I think that is all that I have. Thank you.
Director Hendricks?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
My question was, Director Contreras asked what I'm asking you. Does anybody know what I'm asking? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
My question, well, I don't hear nobody respond. I don't hear responding. I'm concerned that Director Contreras has instructed staff to meet with these dissatisfied people. If you're gonna do that for Contreras, then do it for everybody. Okay? This game playing stuff, I'm tired of it. And Jamie, I would suggest that that's not your job. You have done your work. Now you all can take it from there. I will be at the next meeting. If God says so, I'll be there. And Ms. Moore, would you have the clerks to put what wards these items represent? Because they watch these meetings and the secretary has a position to put what ward we're talking about.
They are on there.
No, not my agenda. If you look at some of the things that happened in Ward 1, it's not listed. I think at the very beginning of the agenda. That's what they're paid to do.
Director Hendricks, you got an item on here on Cross Street, on the planning and development items, and it says Ward 1. I'm not sure.
Go up at the very top. I think there were two things at the very top that were ward positions. And see, I don't have time to try to explain to these people that's watching.
Okay, Soma, that's Ward 1.
Yeah, you know I wouldn't bother you if I didn't know what I was talking about.
Okay, you were right. Happy belated 91st birthday, Director Hendricks.
Thanks. And Bruce, you were so kind. Thank you.
All right.
I'm finished, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am. Seeing no other questions?
I have a question, Mayor.
Vice Mayor Hines?
Mayor, based on what seems to be the escalation in shootings and homicides back the police, the FBI, the ATF, and the U.S. Attorney's Office for some help, like we did 5 to 6 years ago. I think the Obama administration created a program that we worked and we started prosecuting gun crimes. But I know that the state police commander has at his ability to call up state troopers. The last time we did it, we used them to patrol state highways throughout the city and giving our officers more opportunity to get out into the neighborhoods and do some community policing. So I please would ask that you consider taking a look at doing that. I think we're going to have an all hands on deck where the state, the feds, and our LRPD officers are involved. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. Chief Humphrey has already been working on a numerous number of plans as we fight the violent crime uptick that we have been addressing. I do act from Vice Mayor. We are not in control. We have 34 vacancies, which are lower than it was several years ago. At that point in time,
Mayor, we are short officers in our patrol division.
and
That is not.
Vice Mayor Hines, I'm still speaking, and I did not interrupt you. Back in 2017, the vacancy was close to 80 to 85 people. We're somewhere around 30 to 34. So I just want to make sure we're sharing accurate information, and that is accurate information. Thank you. Any more questions?
Yes,
Director Adcock?
yes. I have handed
Oh,
out.
thank you. And Director Adcock, I do want to commend you on this past weekend, and I think you have a report, but before you give your report, I want to commend you and Doris and Dion Jackson and LRTV and IT and the Parks Community Center staff that work with you with the Honduras consulate. If you would, please share.
Thank you. I believe I handed out to everyone a copy of our report, thanking everyone from IT, Housing, Little Rock Police Department, Parks and Rec, and Dr. Jackson. Yes, we was there till 1:30 a.m. on Sunday. We worked 51 hours from 4 o'clock on Thursday to 5 o'clock on Sunday, 5 p.m. It was a wonderful time. We saw around 800 people. We performed about 1,200 items of people. We had people from all over. And I know it's late, but I want to tell you one thing. When it came to Saturday night and everyone was so tired, had been there all day, we had a group of people outside waiting in line. There was about 20 of them. And they had come from Memphis over to Little Rock to see the consulate. And it was about 9 o'clock at that time, and we knew we was going to go way late in the night. I went out into the building and asked about a room full of people. How many of you live in Little Rock? And they raised their hands. And I asked them if they would give, 20 of them would give their slot where they were sitting to the people outside from Memphis. They had no money for food to spend the night in Little Rock. They had no place to stay that night in Little Rock. And they was going to drive back. And they had lots of young children with them. And I asked the people in our city if they would trade places with them. And I had one lady put up her hand and she said, could I be first? And I said yes. And then the others followed. And we had 25 people that said that they would trade their slot of waiting in line so somebody from Memphis could go and be seen that evening. We assured them that at the open, the next day at 7 a.m., the first people, and they was there at 7 a.m. waiting. But the people from Memphis was, when we told them, and I took the people from Little Rock out so they could be there when we told the people from Memphis, and they started crying because they were so touched that people in our city would give their slots to them. And I just wanted to brag on the citizens of Little Rock, or the residents of Little Rock, who said, can we be first in doing this? Because it made me as a city director so proud of the people that we serve. And I just wanted y'all to know about it. Thank you.
Thank you again for your leadership, Director Adcock. I know how near and dear this is to you, and it was just a sight to see the many people that were out there this past weekend. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of it.
You're welcome. Thank you for attending.
That being said, are there any additional questions or comments? We discussed. I want to commend the men and women of the Little Rock Police Department. One of the things that we know across the nation, there's been a violent crime uptick, but we continue to address crime and continue to have a stellar capture rate and continue to do what we need to do to ensure this public safety in the entire city and every area of the city. And just want to make sure we reiterate our appreciation to the men and women of the Little Rock Police Department. Everyone have a blessed day.
Mayor, before we leave real quick, I know we got some comments about people had a problem with the audio, so if you can remind the viewing audience where we're going to be next week.
Yes, thank you so much, Director Phillips. Next week, we will be at Little Rock Southwest High School in Southwest Little Rock. And then in the month of July, we will be at Philander Smith College. And quite possibly in August, may be at the Center at University Park. This is an effort in alignment with Director Phillips' recommendation to go to several parts of the city, across the entire city, to bring the city board meetings to the people and to ensure that we continue to connect with our residents as we move forward. Thank you so much. Meeting adjourned.